Continuing with Unit 1, Day 1 notes, literal equations, it says, what is a formula? Is an equation that relates two or more quantities. We just did that with our perimeter. Solve for a variable. To rewrite an equation as an equivalent equation in which the variable is on one side and does not appear on the other side. So if you look just in general at all the problems that are listed here, you can see that it already has a variable by itself, like I is by itself or A is by itself. But let's say I want to solve for P. How would I get P by itself when I have a RT next to it? Okay, and what we do is we're just going to do the opposite. So I look and see, okay, well this is P times R times T. So if I'm multiplying something, the opposite would be to divide that. So on both sides, I'm going to divide by RT. So those R's and those T's cancel, leaving me with P. And then that would equal I over RT. Also, a good rule of thumb is if you are given a letter capitalized, then you keep it capitalized. If it's lowercase, you keep it lowercase. In part B, the idea of clearing the fraction is a great idea here. I don't want to work with 4/5. So to get rid of the fraction, I'm going to multiply both sides by that denominator. So this is saying 5 times m and 5 times 4/5 hk. Well, these 5's cancel. Okay, that leaves you with 4 hk. Here, 5 times m is just 5m. But if my goal is to solve for k, okay, then if I look next to k, I've got 4 times h times k. Well, then opposite of multiply would be divide by the 4h. So I would have k equals 5m over 4h. Okay, and letter C, this one we simply have to clear the fraction again. So I'm going to multiply both sides by b, and that cancels out. So I have BA equals m. Okay, but as I see in the directions, it says solve for B. I don't have B by itself. So if I look at this equation, it looks like, well, B times A. So opposite of multiply is to divide by that A. For letter D, looks like there is a typo here. So let's see. No, I guess it is right. Okay. So for this one, if we want the capital R by itself, okay, you have to think of this as capital R times the quantity R sub 1 plus R sub 2. If this is multiplication, like R times this whole quantity, you want to divide by that whole quantity to both sides. And then that whole quantity marks out. Okay? Leaving us with R, capital R. Then over here we've got R sub 1 times R sub 2. And then when you rewrite the quantity, if there's nothing in front of it here or behind it, you can drop the parentheses. So that would be our final answer there. Okay, for E, to get H by itself. So here's your H. The first thing I would do is I would move, okay, because it's separated by a plus sign, it makes it a little bit easier. So that 2 is also positive because there's no negative in front of it. So I'm going to subtract this and bring it to the other side. So I have my S still, but if I subtract that, I have minus 2 pi r squared, leaving me with 2 pi r h. Now, if I simply just look at this part, If I want h by itself, it's very much like a up here, where we had to divide by that RT to get p by itself. Now we're going to divide by 2 pi r. So 2 pi r, cancel, cancel, cancel. I have h by itself. But that means that the entire other side, the whole expression, gets divided by 2 pi r. And I can't cancel anything out here because this 2 pi r squared has a minus in front of it with the s in front. This is a quantity. I can't split it up. I can't remove anything like a piece of it. So I need to keep that as a whole and that as a whole. So s minus 2 pi r squared over 2 pi r. Okay, letter F, there are 2 ways to solve this. Okay, the first way is what you have learned with clearing a fraction. Okay, so actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this out on a Post-it to show you the way you would do this by clearing a fraction. All right, so if I were to clear the fraction, I multiply every term by a, and that cancels. So I have a times v equals a times g. A is canceled, so I just have m left. Okay? Then, to get the a by itself, I want the a's together. So I'm going to subtract ag, meaning that it's just going to be like right next to it. So av minus ag equals m. Now, hopefully, when you took Algebra 1, you learned about a GCF, greatest common factor. And I know that we don't have numbers here, but if you look at both of these expressions, they both have an a. Well, then a can come out of that equation. Okay, so I would put a in the front, and then if I take an a away from av, I have v left. If I take an a away from ag, I have a negative g left. Okay, then what I need to do to get the a by itself is you're going to have to divide this whole fraction, or sorry, this whole expression by v minus g. So this expression cancels, that cancels, and we have a equals m over v minus g. And that is the solution. Now that is the way with clearing the fraction. And most times clearing the fraction does make things easier. In this case, it's a little more complicated. So what is another way? Well, the other way is we could simply subtract g. We have v minus g equals m over a. We still got to get a by itself, so how do we do that? Well, we would multiply both sides by a, and that cancels. A times v minus g equals m. And as you can see, that is exactly what we got, like earlier. And now we just have to divide by that quantity v minus g. So a equals m over v minus g. Okay, I want you to be aware of this one because you will see this one again, just different letters, on a quiz, I believe. So please be on the lookout for complicated and understanding moving your variables correctly. Okay, letter G, to get W by itself, I see that I have that 2L before the plus sign. So I want to subtract it. It's a positive 2L. So I'm going to subtract 2L. I have P minus 2L. And that canceled, and then I have equals 2W. Okay, to get W by itself, I would divide by 2. And I would have W equals P minus 2L over 2. For letter H, to get b sub 2 by itself, let's clear that fraction. So first, I want to multiply this side of the equation by 2 and this side of the equation by 2. So this gives me 2a. This cancels, leaving me 1h. Well, 1 times h is just h. Okay, then I know that the h times the quantity means that I'm going to divide by something. So if I want b2 to stay, I got to get rid of the h out here. So I'm going to divide both sides by h and have 2a over h equals b1 plus b2. Now, to keep the b2, you have to subtract the b1 from both sides. So what does that look like? Let's go ahead and write b2. So now I'm going to take this fraction, 2a over h minus that b sub 1. Okay, the last problem, it says the equation c equals 5/9 minus, parentheses, f minus 32 relates temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit and degrees Celsius. What is f in terms of c? What does that mean? That means that you need to solve for f. Oh, I can't see it. You solve for f. So in this equation, first thing I would do is I would multiply both sides by 9. So I would have 9c. Those 9's cancel, so I've got 5 times the quantity f minus 32. If my goal is to get f by itself, I got to get rid of this 5 first, so I'm going to divide it. So 9c divided by 5 equals f minus 32. If f has to be by itself, then I need to get rid of that 32 by adding it to both sides. So f equals 9c divided by 5 plus 32.